From the dawn of man, indigenous people from every corner of the globe have spoken of things that have now been discounted as myth or legend. Things they saw, lived alongside by, were looked upon as deities or worshipped by gods. Things that present-day man refer to as entities, spirits, demons, cryptid creatures, extraterrestrials, and much more. But sadly, modern man, science and society has discounted what our ancestors spoke of as legend and myths. But there are those of us that know what the ancient ones spoke of is the truth, those of us who are obsessed with finding out the truth. This search for answers brings us into the world of the unknown and unexplained. It brings us on the trail, in search of living legends. Please join us tonight in another part of our journey to find these answers and bring the truth out into the light. Welcome and thank you for listening.
Welcome everybody to Jesus God. I don't even know what episode this is. I believe it's episode 12. Yeah, no, this is episode 12 of On the Trail, the Search for Living Legends. I am being joined tonight by my good mentor, fellow researcher, Mr. T.W Youngs. T.W, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good, man. I can't complain. I mean, I could complain, but who would listen?
Yeah, 90% of the people don't care, and 10% are glad you got the problems.
Without a doubt. I couldn't agree more. Very well put. Very well put. Anyway. Anyway, man. I'm glad you came on. I appreciate it. T, can you just give us if you don't mind, just give us a quick background on yourself.
Let's see.
As far as, what you can get into,
I'd spent 25 years in the Army. 9 of that was in combat arms. 3 and a half of that was I was a special forces candidate. Had a bad jump and pretty much ended my my tenure in special forces. I had one class left that I was going to. I had to go to Monterey Defense Language Institute to learn my third language, or learn actually my second foreign language. And of course, you spend enough time in the military, you pick up words that are foreign words anyways. So you can kind of fumble through, different cultures and different countries. But special forces, you have to be. They really want you fluent in at least 2 other languages other than English.
Okay.
Anyways, like I said, I had a bad jump. I was a toe jumper, and that pretty much ended my career in special forces, because at that point, I knew I couldn't jump out of an airplane ever again after that. With that being said, they gave me the option to go get a different job, so I did. Went from there. I got spent some time doing some pretty incredible. I had some pretty good jobs in the military. I was
Yeah.
afforded the opportunity to be able to rub elbows with some of the more prestigious and more elite individuals in government and in the military. From there, I became a city cop. And I had retired the first time from the Army in 2008, July of 2008, with intentions of never going back. Well, by October of 2008, I had separated from my ex-wife. Ended up, we started going through a divorce. By April of 2009, we were in our first hearing with the judge, and we'd already done our separation hearing. But it was technically supposed to be our last hearing, joint split of joint property and that kind of stuff.
Right.
She was withholding orders calling me back to military service. So I didn't know it. After the hearing, and I found that out because she had it sent to my house the very next day. And she had opened it, and it was orders calling me back to the Army. And essentially, they were asking me if I was willing to come back on active duty status for a little while. And I said, yeah. So that kind of, judge found out about it. Of course, I didn't tell the judge, but the judge found out, which kind of put put us in our divorce in a holding pattern. Went and did almost 10 months in the Middle East. Got blown up. Had a stress-induced heart attack, which was, it was no damage to my heart by any means, but because I was dealing with all the crap there, plus the crap at home, gave me an irregular arrhythmia in my heartbeat. So dealt with that, come back, discovered that when I came back, I was, they sent you through a whole medical deal, and the doc that was taking down the answers to all my questions said, what do you mean your left leg's falling asleep? And I said, well, my left leg's falling asleep. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I can walk. If I sit too long, my left leg falls asleep. If I walk more than 100 yards, my left leg falls asleep. So he went through my medical packet, because everything is now digital. And he said, I'm going to send you in for an MRI. Did an MRI and discovered that my spine was broke. And they attributed it to going through the they attributed it going through the improvised explosive device explosions that I went through, and it's called the Monroe effect. There's a shockwave.
You went through a couple of them, didn't you?
Yeah, I went through 3 of them. The Monroe effect is a shockwave that emanates from the epicenter of the blast, which is where you end up with your craters, and it emanates 360 degrees in every direction. not just outward, but up and down. And we had went through 3 IEDs right in a row.
Right.
And the first one pushed us sideways. The second one lifted us up onto our driver's side tires. The third one actually pushed us completely over. I was in an up armored vehicle. Ended up landing on the individual. I was doing a protective service detail, and I ended up landing on the general I was assigned to protect, and I was his protective service officer. So, basically he said, "Youngs, get your fat ass off of me." So it was my fault. I was putzing around with my backpack, my day bag. And I wasn't buckled in like I was supposed to be.
Right.
It's Army regs. But, the only thing kept me from getting in any kind of serious trouble over it was, hey, look, I had to bend down to get into this bag, and I couldn't very well do it because there was a guy sitting next to me. I couldn't just pull the bag up and set it in the seat next to me. Anyways, it did some real damage to the guy in the turret, the guy that was manning the 50 caliber machine gun.
Oh, okay.
He ended up getting hurt pretty bad. Could have been life-threatening if we didn't have we were in a convoy. If we didn't have the proper medical staff on hand, he could have been in some serious trouble. Sure. But because we had medical staff on hand, we had we had good comms with other vehicles to call in a medevac. We got him out of there, got the general out of there, got me out of there. I didn't think anything about it because I wasn't. I mean, they monitored me for 24 hours. They were concerned about there being such a disruption in my vital organs that it would cause what they call a cascading effect of multi-organal shutdown. And that happens within the first 12 to 24 hours. Well, after 24 hours, everything was fine. I didn't have that.
Right.
But there was still didn't realize that it, had fractured my spine because I was bent in such a weird position that when we went through the blasts, it actually caused a compression fracture in my spine. They did surgery on me twice here in the States. The first one was to put 2 titanium rods in my back. They removed portions of L4 and L5. The second surgery was because I wasn't healing up right. I had a massive infection. So they had to go in and clean it out and make sure the hardware wasn't compromised, that the bone wasn't degrading and then infected. The bone wasn't infected, but it was, the incision site, because it went right through the middle of my back, was pretty gnarly looking. Wasn't healing up. It was sore as shit. Ended up meeting a girl here where I'm at now, a local girl. I had every intent on going back to the Dallas area because I had a job as a deputy constable there. And I made pretty good money as a deputy constable, considering the area where I was at. $57,000 a year is pretty good money.
No, sure, yeah.
Especially in law enforcement. Needless to say, my boss, who's an elected official, had decided he was going to retire. The guy that was running for his seat had basically spread some lies about my old boss and spread some lies about the guy that was running against him, a guy had actually at one point he was my chief of police when I first got into civilian law enforcement. And I just couldn't, I couldn't work for somebody like that. You know, there's a certain amount of politics that go on, but to fabricate stuff that isn't true, that wasn't even part of the common lexicon of said individuals, I just couldn't work for that guy. So I ended up getting a job here where I'm at now, which is in far west Texas. Ended up working for a sheriff's department in New Mexico. Realized that they were had their own brand of law enforcement. Most of the guys that I worked with are, you know, top-notch, very good cops. But the command staff there's a little bit to be desired. Because they would expect you to do stuff, and if you didn't do it, then they get all mad about it. I'm like, wait a minute, put it down in policy, I'll do it. But if it's not in policy, you leave it up to me, I may not make the decision you think I should make. And you're armchair quarterbacking me here. Unless you've been there, you know. And there's 101 ways to do law enforcement. You know, you don't have to be a jackbooted ticket Nazi to be a good cop. Sometimes it's, you know, you dictate the encounter. Your demeanor dictates the encounter.
Oh, sure.
The tempo, the tenor, the temper of which the individual you're stopping or that you're confronting, if you have a bad demeanor or you have a very escalated, excited demeanor about that person, that can weigh heavily on how he responds or she responds. And it can go sideways very quickly. So, you know, they didn't much care for my, you know, wasn't laid back. You know, if it was a felony grade encounter, I would treat it as such. I always kept my eyes on the suspect. If he seemed agitated, then my awareness and my hypervigilance would kick in. And I would take appropriate action. But you know, for a traffic stop, I'm not gonna hem somebody up over, you know, a stupid traffic stop.
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you know, they didn't much appreciate about me. Ended up leaving there and went back to the town that I was initially hired by, and that's where I was until I decided to go back to school and get my degree. And I got a degree in animal husbandry, and I got a degree in wildlife management and ecology. So
awesome.
That's where we're at now.
Awesome. Well, I know we were all happy, you know, you went back to school, and yeah, we were all proud of you. That's for sure, man. That's for sure. Now, as far as you know, how you got into the field, I know, you know, we've all you and I know each other for years now, and you know, you and I, everyone knows you and I have our special way of showing love towards one another is the art of the ball busting.
Is that what we call it, love? I just call it giving you shit.
Well, yeah, that works too.
No, Very, very hot.
Oh yeah, and I got Stacy in the background yelping too. So yeah, don't forget about me, T.
Oh no, I do. I show her that special brand of love too. So
Yeah. But yeah, I know, like I said earlier, I've interviewed on a few other shows, but now that I know you got some really cool, couple cool encounters, that I think people would really be interested in. First one, if you wouldn't mind filling us in on your particular one where you had up close and personal, where
well, we'd had some for lack of a better term, very odd occurrences going on in and around the town that I worked at, and we're right on the New Mexican border.
Right.
Mexico's to the west of us. New Mexico's to the north of us. On one side we got mountains, high plains deserts.
Right.
To the west and the southwest of us we got the Sonoran Desert.
Okay.
Anyways, I get besides having a couple of strange things that happen, get called out one night to a suspicious circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had some other encounters that I didn't see anything, but I definitely knew something was going on. Anyways, lady met me at the door, and she was basically, for lack of a better term, she was escalated in her excitement.
Okay.
And she said it's behind the house. Or her exact words are, he's behind the house.
Okay.
So I went one direction, and I didn't see anything. All I saw was a rock wall. So I went around to the other side, and there was a path. There was a rock wall, but it didn't connect to the house. It was just dividing property. And so I went around and walked that side of the house, and didn't see anything. Got to the back side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, my weapon was drawn, and on my I carry a 1911.
Okay.
And my 1911 it's set up for a tactical flashlight.
Right.
Where you can connect the flashlight right to the pistol itself.
Which you got a rail on the bottom of the
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I get to the back of the house, and I can see in the shadow there's something standing there next to where I would think a kitchen window would be.
Mm-hmm.
And behind the shadow, I knew that there was a back door.
Right.
So as I got closer, that's when I realized it wasn't a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
There's something real big.
Right.
So, I'm raising my pistol up. It's at the ready, and I'm raising it up to get the light on what I'm looking at. And I keep going up and up and up and up and up until I'm almost at a 45-degree angle. Well, by this time, that that whole backside of that house is maybe 60 feet deep. And that's just a guesstimation. I don't know. I didn't measure it. And it's about, two-thirds of the way from the corner of the house that I'd come around.
Right.
And I'd taken a couple of steps and gotten closer. So that way I could see what the hell I'm looking at. And as I got almost at a 45-degree angle, that's when hand went up, because I looked at a midriff, I looked at a belly button, I looked at hairy ass pecs, and I'm thinking in my mind, what the hell am I looking at?
Right.
It didn't register right away. But when the light hit it in the face, that's when the one hand come up and covered its eyes
From the light. Yeah.
Yeah. And I could see the teeth. I definitely remember a very broad chin, very broad shoulders, twice the width I am.
And you're a pretty big guy.
I'm not a small man.
Right.
I wear a size 48 dinner coat.
Yeah.
46, 48, depending on who makes the coat. And this thing was twice as wide as I was.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see muscle. And as the light hit it in the face and the other hand come up, the right hand swung out almost like in a kind of an underhand sideways swing. And a piece of stove wood, impacted the side of the house, sounded like a damn rifle shot. And just barely missed my head. And it wasn't a small piece of wood. It was, I bet you that joker weighed about 10 pounds.
And this thing tossed it with ease and accuracy.
Yeah. Well, I'm standing there looking at it, and it's covering its face with both hands at this point. And it's kind of grunting and groaning. I think more because the light was, affecting its night vision.
Sure.
And that light is not a tame light. You get hit in the face with that thing, and it hurts.
Oh yeah.
It's 300 lumens, so it's a pretty stout light. Anyways, I heard something behind me. And I'm thinking, oh shit, there's a second one. And and I'm like slowly turn around. There's a flipping dog right behind me. I'm like, colorful metaphors. God. Well, as I turn back around, the damn thing's, marching right out into the darkness, out into the desert. And not running, but at a pretty good clip. And I'm like, oh shit. So, like I said, there were some things that had happened prior to that. I had a friend of mine, deputy sheriff, took down a report. So we went out and this is a couple weeks prior to this. Yeah. We went out and checked that area. Well, we got roared at. And the thing, it was so strong that I felt the vibrations of the sound in my chest.
Oh yeah.
And that's how close it was.
Sure.
And it was almost like a lion's roar.
Yeah. Rattled your whole all your guts and everything.
Yeah, it vibrated my damn innards. So we haul ass. He pees himself.
Yeah.
And finally we get up to Denny's and we're sitting there. His supervisor shows up, tells him get in the car. And like a week later, he wouldn't even talk to me. And I finally cornered him at when we all went out on lunch. And he's like, dude, I can't talk about this. I said, what do you mean you can't talk about it? He said, Sheriff doesn't want us talking about it. He said, there's been some people that's come in that I don't know who the hell they are. And I said, one big guy, one guy about my size, my build. And he goes, yeah. I said, big guy kind of looks like a biker or Grizzly Adams all wrapped up into one. He goes, yeah. And I said, yeah, I know who you're talking about. So, that had went by. I ended up, they disbanded us because we had did an investigation on the city manager and on embezzlement claim. We had gotten a federal grant for, a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
And it was gone.
Now,
and
you think they took it away because you looked into the situation?
No, it was the city manager that used
Okay.
it for other, other stuff that she wasn't supposed to use it for. She just thought she could use it for whatever because it was federal money. No, that goes to law enforcement. You can't use it to make payroll for city works.
Right.
Sorry. So they knew that the city council knew that we were gunning for their fair-haired child. So they disbanded us. Didn't stop what was coming down the pike. And they thought that once we did that, then everything would, if they don't have a police department, they can't file a case, and any cases that are pending go away. Well, no, it doesn't work that way.
No.
So kind of fast forward a couple of years, and I get a phone call from a guy I know that used to come to my church on a regular basis. And he's like, you ain't going to believe this. And he tells me what had happened a couple days prior. He's out watering his tomato plants. And one thing led to another.
What kind of gun you just got?
It's a buntline, buddy. Anyways, he's out watering his tomato plants. He's not paying attention really. And one of these damn things is just standing right in front of him. When he finally noticed it, it shocked him so bad that he ended up squirting it with a water hose. And he's like, you think I'm in trouble? I said, I don't know, man. How do you feel when you get squirted with a water hose? So I get pissed off. I said, well, what we didn't expect to happen is what happened next. And it took several months. These things don't do anything, unless there's, life-threatening circumstances right then. They think, they rationalize,
Absolutely.
they plot, they spend time formulating what they want to do.
Yes.
Well, needless to say, he woke up about 2 a.m. This is, I don't know, maybe 6 months later, kind of a June time frame. Early June, late May, early June. And I get a phone call. I'm on my way to a job in Comado. Or no, Capulan. Buntline, buddy. Sorry about that. Long story short, the damn thing's standing in his bedroom right over top of him.
Oh, good God.
And this is like 2 a.m. I get a phone call from him when he's in the hospital. So tells me what hospital he's in. It's on my way. I pull in real quick, talk to him about 30 minutes. He's beat to shit. The thing was standing over top of him. What woke him up was the smell.
Really?
And
I can see that.
And he said it was just so pungent.
Mm.
It was like wet dog and sewer and rotten meat all wrapped up into one smell, and skunk.
And hadn't it urinated all over the wall too, T? I thought you told me.
Yeah, it apparently it as soon as he woke up and realized what he was looking at, the thing grabbed him, was on top of him, pummeling him, bit off a finger, clear down to the second knuckle.
Oh my God.
Threw him up against the wall, jumped on him again, knocked him unconscious. And he said, the next thing I remember is that I'm waking up, it's gone. And he said, I get to my cell phone, I called 911, say I had a home invader, beat the hell out of me. Well, you know, of course, EMS and that county sheriff's department shows up and they get him out of there. And I said, well, I'm going to go out to your place and see what I can see. So I get out there, and lo and behold, there's a friend of mine. He's like, I'll let you go in, but you can't take pictures. Give me your phone. And I went out. I didn't go out there alone. I went out there with a couple of guys that I knew that were willing to go out there with me. And I go in the house, and the house is just ramsacked. 150-year-old China hutch that is made out of heavy wood was nothing but kindling at that point. And it pulled it down. And when I say heavy wood, I'm talking like mahogany and teak. Very dense wood. The kitchen was a mess. Get to one part in his bedroom, and I'm looking at the damage in the bedroom, and the damn thing apparently pissed on the walls. Because I know this guy ain't peeing on the walls, but it was still, there was a puddle of urine there. I didn't have anything to take a sample with it.
After he attacked him? Right.
Yeah,
right.
I think
you think he pissed on the wall after?
I think it was more to lay claim to territory.
Sure.
After that, I did some real serious research, and primates tend to do that. They do. And I'm not saying this thing is a primate, but
right.
And this guy explained what he saw. He remembers it. He said, "Yeah, it was dark in my room, but the damn thing was right there. It was standing right over top of me, and it was actually kind of hunched over because his ceilings are only like 7 foot tall, and the thing was kind of hunched over."
So it was a good size one then.
Yeah. So. The research I found out that when chimps attack, fellow troops, they do some vile things to each other. They bite fingers off. They bite noses off.
Yep.
They
cannibal.
Yeah, cannibalism. They remove testicles. They urinate and defecate on each other. It's nasty. So that kind of explained that. Needless to say, this guy ended up losing his ranch. And and they gave him a pretty penny. The land now belongs to the BLM. And they're all proud of it because he actually had some archaeological sites that the government wanted. And since it was in, it was private property, they can't very well just come in and say, well, we're going to take this from you. They have to show a need.
Right. Sure.
But now the BLM's got it, and it's an archaeological site on a couple of places on his old place. He ended up passing away just a little more than a year ago.
That's too bad.
Yeah, well, his son ended up with a chunk of change when he passed away, but and that's all from that ranch. But
Right.
yeah, these things are not. Uh, they're more curious and they're shy than anything. But if you,
Yeah.
they're vengeful and they're vindictive.
Yes, they are.
They
They are.
they have the tendency to, if they feel threatened, they'll come after you. If you
Yes, they.
are, if you're too close to their actual bedding sites, they don't like that.
No, they don't at all. I called you that one night. Remember when I
Yeah,
was surrounded when we went up that hunt?
yeah.
You know,
And I told you get the hell out of there.
you said get the hell out of there. You and Will both said you guys need to get the hell out of there quick because with
Yeah,
that one drop, we saw its eyes about 8 feet up. All of a sudden, it dropped right to its belly, and I remember right after I told you that it did that, you said get the hell out of there. You interrupted a hunt. Get out of there now. And
yeah.
we slowly made our way out, and they paced us the whole way out.
Well, yeah, they're gonna follow you.
Yeah, yeah.
That following summer, and I've come to the conclusion that there's a resident population that doesn't really. They're not as nomadic as other populations can be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's enough wildlife. There's enough game.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough food sources through all seasons.
Yes.
For them to sustain life.
You talking about in your area?
In that particular area.
Okay.
I've talked to other researchers that have been in that area.
Yeah.
At different times of the year.
Yeah.
Went back into it's almost a valley or a canyon, box canyon, that goes way back on the back side of this guy's property.
Right.
They've had rocks thrown at them. They've been screeched at. They've been hooted at. They've had looting calls. Yeah. One guy got hit with a rock. Right dead center in his chest, knocked him on his ass. And then, of course, all the rock throwing at that point ceased.
Yeah.
But, it was, and it, that whole area of the Sacramento Mountains, is such a vast corridor of box canyons and, mountains that they can travel clear up into the alpine regions all the way down into the desert. And they have food sources year round. They have water sources year round. There's springs and artesian wells there that, within a day's walk, they could be from one water source to the next.
Sure. Well, it's like you told me that, like in our area where I'm from originally, I told you, on that piece of property where we've had our sightings, we've got that artesian spring. Now, that particular, I've come to the conclusion that particular group, they stick around all year round in that spot. Well, as others in the area, as soon as the snow flies, they'll take off, go somewhere else, come back. But that particular group will stay where that spring is. They stay put all year round. Like you said, the resources are there, the water's there, the game.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, T?
You there?
Yeah, you still there?
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, it makes sense for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's just some groups are very nomadic, and they'll travel from one feeding spot to the next, and that's what I kind of figured that one group that I ran into in the town that I worked in, which was on the outskirts of that town.
Yeah.
That group's probably pretty nomadic. of course, there's a lot of pecan orchards and apple orchards and peach orchards up and down that corridor.
Sure.
But they probably travel a pretty good distance.
Yeah.
But then there's those groups that kind of are more stationary. That stay in one location or in a resident location.
Yeah.
And they don't venture out too far.
Right. Like I think the the group I was just referring to, they I think they stick within. A buddy of mine who was another law enforcement officer. I think you might have been on one of the interviews I did with him. John is his name. He's got a hobby farm and stuff. He's got 7 of these things on his property. I think if you were to follow that spring that we have on our research spot up there, follow that spring and follow the waterway, and you were to walk 15 miles, it would end you right up on his property.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it very well could be the same group, but I don't think they travel any much further than that.
Yeah, no vast distances.
Right. But like you said, there's others that will travel long.
Yeah.
But it's
and
hard,
that's
like you were saying about the light. I'm glad you mentioned that because we got into a light debate the other day on one of the shows. Some of these people, talk about the self-illumination of the eyes and all that. It just, come on, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's another conversation for another time, but,
yeah. I mean,
granted, there's a lot we don't know, but still, I just
because they're nocturnal, I think that their pupils stay fairly well dilated to the large region, and the least little bit of light will give them an eye shine.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you there. It's like you said, when you shine the light in that one's eyes with your weapon, you cover up his eyes immediately.
Yeah.
It's like that juvenile that I had my first encounter with, as soon as I put my headlamp on him, and I wanted to check him out through the scope. As soon as I did both those things, he covered up his eyes. He didn't like that light.
Yeah, and that's I think that's
weapon,
what.
For that matter.
No, and I've told other researchers, you point a gun at them, that they don't know how it works,
right?
But they understand what. Yeah, they understand that it death and destruction comes with it.
Absolutely.
They're not stupid. I've actually read about and heard about other encounters where people have been out deer hunting, shot a deer, and one of these things step out from behind a tree, grab a deer, and start running.
Yeah.
Or that they'll go towards gunshots. Bears do that.
Dinner bell. Bears do it. Dinner bell.
Yeah, and it's the stories I've heard from people in Alaska about out moose hunting. The minute they touch off a rifle, it's not very long. If there's a Kodiak anywhere within a couple of miles, they're beating feet to that location.
Sure.
And they, there was a guy in outside of Anchorage that an elderly gentleman actually killed a Kodiak with a buck folding knife. He got some damage. He got some serious damage. The thing grabbed his arm, grabbed his thigh, had done some serious damage, but he had that buck folding knife. He was gutting an elk, and he just kept stabbing it, and basically hit it in the side of the head with the knife in his hand. The thing kind of let go. This is after it had grabbed him by the thigh and was shaking him. And he he basically killed it with that. You know, he's kind of a legend because he's like in his 80s.
That's amazing, actually. That's actually pretty amazing.
And they have a program in Alaska that the elderly can they can get proxy hunters to go out and hunt for them because you know the game is so plentiful up there. And they realize that a lot of people live off, you know, the hunting is subsistence living.
Yes.
And you know, meat is so expensive up there. You know, beef is
Oh,
that they actually go in and you know they'll get a proxy hunter to go out and hunt for them. And that's you know I've got several friends that go up there, and I've been hunting in Alaska, and it's you know it's daunting at best, and it's terrifying at the least because all kinds of thoughts go through your mind. You know, the last thing you want to do is face a 1,200-pound, 9-foot Kodiak grizzly, and you damn sure don't want to fight them over a friggin' elk or a moose. But there's guys up there that will. You know, and that's I mean, and that's the one thing that kind of you know kind of kept me from. I'd seen a pretty good sized bull moose, and I'd thought long and hard, do I really want to pull that trigger? Because you know you got to get down there, you got to get them gutted. If you drop them too far away from a tree, you stand a chance on being on open ground and even footing with a grizzly bear. And black bears will do it too.
Sure. Yep.
But you know, to go up against a grizzly, that's why you know most hunters in Alaska won't hunt by themselves. They always have somebody else go with them.
Well, that's smart. I think that's a smart thing anyway, you know.
Yeah, and they, you know, one guy acts as a sentry, and the other one acts as a you know, he guts the animal and quarters it up and gets it out of there. But the one is acting as a sentry to, you know, looking for, you know, dangerous wildlife that intends to do damage.
Right.
So, you know, and that's even when I was a kid, I had a doctor that, you know, the family doctor would go to Alaska and go to Idaho and Montana and do some serious hunting. And he was a big time serious hunter.
Yeah.
And he, you know, he told me about one of the hunts that he was on, and you know, they weren't going after mountain lions. This is in Idaho.
Oh, okay.
But they happened to run across a mountain lion in a tree, and you know, he took a picture with the mountain lion still alive and his hands on the tree, and then he realized the damn thing had pissed all over him while he was in this tree, standing there getting his picture taken with this you know, semi-big cat. Of course, then he ends up shooting it and he has it stuffed, and it was in his office. I thought that was quite the story, but you know, it's. And I got a friend that I'd served with that lives where I'm at right now, and you know, he substitutes his pork intake with mountain lion meat, and he said you can't really tell the difference. And I'm like, you're kidding. The last thing I'd think about doing is eating a mountain lion. He said, oh hell, he said most of them are, you know, it's meat. You know, he said you gotta cook it thoroughly because they are full of parasites. But he said, you know, you get them gutted, and he's got like 9 or 10 rugs, and he helps a hunter up in the over in the Gila region go after problem mountain lions.
Okay.
And the guy's a guide.
Right.
And, of course, Dave's always like, hey, you want to go with me? I'm like, oh, hell no. I've been in that area. There's
Right.
been some things that happened in that area I couldn't explain. And you know
Right.
what? That's where Travis Walton come up missing from. I
Yep.
don't want to be in. I don't want to be in that area.
Hell no. Hell no.
And then they find
Definitely
him
not.
like 5 days later, and he's lost 15 pounds and
Yeah.
looks like hammered shit. And so, no, I don't want to be in that area. I'm sorry.
Right. Actually, 1 second. Actually, Shawn just joined in. There we go. But yeah, no, you're right, man. I mean, people don't understand. T, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So people, you and I have said this several times, man. People don't understand the size of these things. They just don't until they actually get up next to one.
Or I did see one within a close proximity of themselves, and then they realize how big the damn things are.
Right. People just don't get it. They don't.
And then when they finally do get it, they're like, holy shit, that damn thing's big. Well, yeah, it's
Right.
big. You're talking about a creature that has been known to live from almost every natural biome in the U.S.
Right.
And not just the U.S. If you really want to get technical, they're on every continent except Antarctica for all we know. They're highly adaptable, extremely ingenious when it comes to having wherewithal. They plan attacks, they plan hunts, they do a lot to as far as mothering their young. There's reports out there that they've seen mothers and young together, where the mother is carrying the baby. They're not anything anybody would expect.
Right.
And it goes contrary to everything that we think should be natural in our given world. And when what we think is supposed to be normal is turned upside down,
Sure.
People's perceptions and understanding come crashing down around their ears.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why we have a lot of people that are very reticent and very quiet about if they have an encounter. And then there's those of us that go the other direction.
Yeah.
That
don't care.
Well, we just want to learn as much as we can.
We want to spread the knowledge. Yeah. Hey, Shawn, can you hear us, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you guys fine.
Okay.
I'm mobile. I'm driving down the road. I didn't want to cause any
That's okay.
bad sound, so I muted myself for a second there. But
hey,
it's good to hear your voice, man. I haven't talked to you in a long time. How you been?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing great. Better than I should be, for sure. But yeah, you're right about everything you're saying here. I agree with you 100%. And I personally, the one that I saw wasn't. I couldn't get a size comparison. It was behind a bush, but
it
yeah,
wasn't
they
normal.
are super duper smart animals for sure.
No,
for sure.
Unreal.
Yep. Well, and that's just it. Is that it's not. That's why you have so many people that have that they're so apprehensive to come out and say, well, this is what I saw.
Mm.
One, they're afraid of ridicule. My wife, chouses me on a regular basis. She doesn't believe. And I said, one of these days, God willing, you see one, it'll change how you view the world. We don't know everything that's out there. We don't know.
No.
We think we do, but we don't. And 70% of the earth is covered with water. We have no idea what's at the lowest regions of the oceans, and we discover new shit all the time. And that was one of the things that I brought up in one of my wildlife classes, is that we discover new animals every year.
Oh, yeah.
There's a new venomous snake out there that we never knew existed. There's within the last 10 years, we've had 7 or 8 different new primates discovered. One of them, which is the billy ape.
Yeah.
The
billy ape. There's a. Whew.
They call them lion killers in the Congo.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Where do they go? They go 400 pounds, for crying out loud.
Well, it's just not that, but they stand 5'7".
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not exactly a small. It's not like the chimpanzee you're thinking of, like a bonobo or a eastern chimpanzee. That an eastern chimpanzee can stand up to. I think the height that they recorded is like 5'3". It was the tallest one they ever recorded on that kind of a chimp. On a bonobo, they top out at about 5 feet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like the ones you see on these cute little shows. People don't realize those are babies. Those are young. They don't realize that chimpanzees, the males, they'll get up to 200 pounds and they'll rip you limb from limb.
Oh, that's, I mean, well, they probably do now more because of the news. That one woman in Connecticut that had one that attacked her friend, and they, the police showed up and had to kill it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't stopping. It was trying to get to the cops.
Yeah. They put numerous rounds on that thing too, didn't they? Before they were able to.
Well, I did. You read some of the articles, and one officer emptied his magazine into it. And the thing went back to his house, into his cage, and died in the house.
Yeah.
And that woman is going to be forever scarred from the attack that she went through. And of course, the owner was stabbing it with a knife, and they don't know what triggered it. And that's the one thing that, you talk to some of these primatologists, chimps are unpredictable. I know a few here within the, close proximity where I'm at. They got several chimps, or they had several chimps over at a nearby Air Force base. And they, of course, they all started out as, guinea pigs for the space program. But, and then they ended up becoming research animals for hepatitis C, hepatitis B, AIDS. And one of the caretakers, he's like, he said, there's, you got to be on your guard with chimps. And he said, it's generally the males you got to be on guard with. But he said, every now and again, you'll get a female that gets, rather springy and want to come after you for whatever reason, and you don't know why.
Right.
So.
Right. And you gotta, people gotta understand. I mean, even though, they're chimps, people think they're cute or whatever. People gotta they still have that wild instinct, no matter how.
Oh, they're cute when they're 2 foot tall, when weigh all of 40 pounds. When they get up to 200 pounds, they ain't so cute.
No. And they've still got that wild, the wild in them. No matter how much they're domesticated, they've still got the wild in them, and that's all.
Well, me and my ex-wife, I was married to Big Chief Bleeding Heart. every horse, hound, and homeless animal in a 40-mile or 50-mile radius ended up at our place at one time or another. And we ended up with an Asian elephant for
really?
Awesome. for about 8 weeks.
Really?
And there was one of her clients that had a bunch of horses. They had a menagerie, but they had a lot of horses.
Sure.
They had this Asian elephant, Rosie. They lived in between Rockwall and Kaufman, Texas, and
Right.
they had a pretty good sized piece of property. And they, they had bought this Asian elephant, had her for a couple of years, and said, we can't handle her anymore. And at one point I'm like, no, Valerie, no. And next thing I know, she's, telling me, yeah, we'll take her. And for us, we had the decorative vinyl fencing that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, the really nice looking white 3-board fence. And that's a mere suggestion for an elephant, because it doesn't take much for them to figure out, well, hell, I grab this board with my trunk and pull it sideways, I can get out. And she's smart enough. She figured it out.
Sure.
Because that fence was only a mere suggestion. You really need some heavy duty pipe fencing, and not just pipe fencing that goes 4 feet in the ground. You got to bury that pipe fencing. It's got to be heavy duty pipe fencing, 4-inch pipe, and it's got to be buried 10 feet in the ground in order to withstand the force, and it needs to be welded. So, my ex-wife was the on-call vet for Ringling Brothers when they came to town, and had done that for 4 or 5 years. And we ended up asking them, hey, look, we got this Asian elephant that's ended up at our place. It was a neat novelty item to have, but we don't have the facility for her. She runs the horses off from their feed. She hogs the hay, and when you're feeding, you're feeding a 7-ton animal.
Yeah.
They eat quite a bit of hay. So,
sure.
and what I went through in about 8 weeks is what I normally would go through in, a pretty heavy winter. And I'm like, holy shit, what am I going to do with her? So we ended up giving her to Ringling Brothers. And in return, we ended up with a Lipizzan stallion. And I had him up until just a few years ago. But I had to put him to sleep because he was, ended up getting cancer. And it was, squamous cell carcinoma. It was in his rectum. It was bad. So I couldn't see making him. There was no way you could do. You can't give a horse a colostomy like you do a human.
Right.
So I had to, make that hard decision, put him down. But
sucks.
Yeah, and it was, he hated women. He
really?
hated women. Yeah, and most horses have an affinity to females. Not him. He was always handled by a male, and it was an Eastern European trainer. So he had a real respect for men.
Right.
And I had no problems with him. I could walk out in the pasture with him and pet him and go catch him and bring him in. She'd walk out there. He'd run up to her, wheel around, and kick her.
Right.
He was real hinky about his stall. You didn't putz with him in his stall. If you wanted to mess with him, you had to bring him out of his house, and that was just him. And of course, I ended up castrating him when he was probably 13 years old. So at that point, he had enough testosterone built up in him. He was so used to being a stud. He still thought he was a stud after he was cut. And that was, and he had girlfriends. God, he had that. He was a weird horse. He had an affinity to one of my ex-wife's fillies.
Yeah.
And he was a pervert. So,
Well, I mean, it happens, you know.
it's kind of like you and out in the woods, it's all right.
For works, you know.
Yeah, he jumped through a 2 foot by 2 foot window at a standstill. And this was a 15 hand high horse. I bet he weighed every bit of 1,400 pounds. He was a big horse, and he went through a 2 foot by 2 foot window at a standstill.
Wow.
And I walked up to his stall and said, "Where the hell's Conversano at?" And I'm looking around, and the stall's closed up. And I go outside. He's running up and down the fence line, nickering at this mare, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" Of course, I'm checking everything out. I'm thinking, "Oh shit, he gutted himself." And I'd found a little bit of hair on the lip of the window, where he scraped his belly. And I checked his belly out, and he just had a minor scrape, nothing big, didn't gut him. But holy shit, this horse is as athletic as they come. And that's the one thing, get around animals long enough, you start collating traits from one species to the next.
Absolutely.
And that's the one thing when it comes to these creatures, that's the one thing that they are super athletic. They're savants
unreal.
Yeah, they're savants in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
One could be hiding right in front of you. You'd never know he's there.
Never know it. No.
They could be hiding in trees. You would not believe the reports I've read where that people had said that they had them in trees.
Yep.
And I'm like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 1 minute everything's hunky dory, nobody thinks anything about it. They're not paying attention to what's going on. They hear a thud and they see something running into the woods. And of course they all turn around when they hear the thud, and that's when they see the backside of this thing running in the woods.
Yeah.
There's reports where they've actually paced cars doing 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I still have a hard time believing that. But I also kind of look at it like this. I've never seen one move that fast. I've seen them move out pretty quick where they cover a lot of ground in a very short period of time.
Yeah, in just a few bounds, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a guy that I know that used to be a Midland police officer that actually had one pacing his car. He was a canine handler, and it was pacing his Tahoe.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing 60 miles an hour. He was down in Alpine doing a training session with his dog, and this thing was pacing his car and keeping right up level with the car. And he swears up and down that he was doing 60 miles an hour.
Well, yeah.
And you talk to some other researchers that have done some serious research.
Yeah.
And they say, a lot of times if they really want to, go get out and book it, they'll drop to all fours and then they can really cover some ground at that point. And not just, not talking like 200-300 meters, talking, 1,000 meters.
Yes.
And that's quite a distance. That's a click.
Oh, yeah.
And I've ran a click before, and it took me every bit of, 30 minutes to run a click.
Yeah.
And I was winded.
Yeah.
They can run a click in, a matter of seconds, probably as much as maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. They can cover one end of a click to the other. So, 120 seconds doing that kind of distance, they're booking at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just a rough guesstimate. I've never really put the math to it, but
yeah.
And there's a mathematical equation. You figure out their, start point, end point, distance, time it took them. That you can give you a rough idea how fast they were going, but they're not running, 11 miles an hour like a human does.
No.
they're running a vast distance, and you talk to other researchers and they talk about how they take trophies, like hubcaps or a little, matchbox car, and they'll leave it out. Well, that me and a couple other guys think that that's kind of a luring trip.
I do.
They're trying to lure you, where you come back for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of on board with Will on this one, where it's, they're either trying to get your attention to interact with you, or they're trying to get your attention to draw you into a fatal funnel.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I would caution anybody that does any kind of serious research. Yep. Don't do it by yourself. The more people you have, the better off you are. You don't want to go out with, 80 people, but you definitely don't want to go out by yourself either. Because, the worst case scenario, if something really bad does happen, you got somebody to get you the hell out of there.
Yeah.
But, if you get snake bit, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to hobble on a leg that's been bit by a rattlesnake and, and it's swelling up.
While running from a sunset.
Yeah. But if they think that there's more than just you there, and they can't see that, that's the other thing. Will tells people to, talk like they're talking to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
It confuses them. I did, and I've heard stories from other guys that have come into close proximity to these things with lit cigarettes, and it just wigs them out. Because, they see smoke coming out of their nose and their mouth, and they're like, holy shit, what the hell is that? And that's, some of these guys, lifelong smokers, and they're like, I ain't quitting as long as I research. I'm going to keep smoking cigarettes. Okay, emphysema boy.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mention that. Is I don't smoke much, not as much as my wife. That's for sure. Shit. But I gotta admit, when I'm out there doing research, I do smoke. I light up a cigarette here and there. Now, as far as you saying, like as far as them, what are you saying? They're just confused by it, or it?
It's just they it's like anything else. Well, probably the smell alone would be enough to irritate them. But
I would think it'd probably bother their sense of smell.
Yeah, but the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that it's not a natural act to be blowing smoke out your mouth.
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
It's one thing to see steam, but have some kind of vapor come out, but to see actual smoke and you can smell the smoke, that's enough to, booger even, you talk to people that have been around big cats and they, it's a lion or a tiger seeing you puffing on a cigar is enough to make them take a stuttered step just towards you because what the hell is that?
Yeah,
he's blowing smoke out of his mouth.
Right.
So, is that a dragon? Do I have to worry about it blowing fire on me?
Sure. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying. For sure.
And it's something, especially with something that is intelligent as what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
They probably have the rationale of a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old, but they are very intelligent in their own right.
You're right.
They, like I said, they'll. There was a research case that I did. Walked out. A lady walked out to her field, went and fed goats. Was putzing around another part of the field. Come back the same direction, and there's a goat laying there with the front leg rip off. And exposed, chest cavity. Mountain lions don't do that. they'll break a neck. They'll suffocate them by clamping down on their windpipe and their carotid arteries, but they won't rip a limb off.
No.
And it wasn't there. And it was a time span of about 15, 20 minutes. And it wasn't there when she went out there to check on her goats. They had, at one point, they were going through a tremendous amount of feed. And she never really put two and two together. Her and her husband are from the city.
Yeah.
But then they started noticing how much feed they were going through, and the animals were starting to decrease.
Yeah.
They'd found some carcasses in trees and carcasses in other areas. And the first thing they go for is soft tissue. Hearts, lungs, liver, kidneys, eyeballs, super soft, super tender.
Tongue.
Super tender organs that they can get a hold of.
Sure.
And they, at one point they noticed that they started locking up their livestock feed in a feed room. Well, the door got bent down at the corner. Trying to get to this feed. They couldn't get the door open because it was a prefabricated barn. It was all welded steel, but the door was a hollow core steel door, and they bent the corner of the door down to try to get to the feed. And it was that took a tremendous amount of strength. There's no way you could have done it.
I'm a welder. I know how what it takes to do something like that,
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. It's funny you mention all this. So Shawn and I were talking earlier how we both, we use salt blocks, on our hunting properties, and we both had them come up missing.
Yeah.
Right
well,
away.
And that's me and Will did a test site with salt mineral blocks, and they were breaking that. They were breaking the salt mineral blocks up into smaller pieces.
Yes.
And these were small. These were 25-pound salt licks.
Oh yeah.
They're heavy. They're heavy ass bastards.
Yes.
And they're busting them up into smaller pieces. And of course, they take their amount of salt that they need, and then the rest of it they just let melt away into the soil. The mineral blocks they were just chowing down on, and we went through. Of course, Will was like, "I'll send you the money." I said, "Don't worry about it. This was enough just to see what was going on." But they were chowing down on those mineral blocks.
Yeah.
And these were big mineral blocks. 50-pound mineral blocks.
Yeah.
So.
That's what I use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
And you get them right at the feed store.
Yep.
So, yeah, they and they'll stay in that spot forever. Of course, then the boys that shan't be mentioned were going out there. If they realized what I was doing, they go out there and collect that shit up. And I'd come out and I didn't even have drop pans. They took the drop pans too. Son of a bitch. So I had to go back and get another 4 or 5 blocks and put them out in different locations. And they got to the point where they were following me to figure out where I was dropping these blocks off.
Yeah.
So they were trying to get them to move along. They didn't want them sticking around.
Sure. But yeah, well, that was interesting. There's one more story I was gonna ask you to tell me about, and now for the life of me, I can't tell you which one it was. God,
hell, I don't know.
shit, I don't know either, but it bugs me now. But yeah, no, well, we appreciate it, man. Like I said, we I know we've interviewed you a few times, but most of the people on the C show here haven't heard your stories, and I know you've got more. So we'll have you back on some night, and we'll talk about the rest of them. I like that, the one you told us last time about when you were a kid up in the plains of Texas.
Lone Star Lake. Yeah,
that's the one I like. We'll bring you back on for that one because
all right.
I want you to start from the beginning and get into the whole spiel on that one. Sean, you'll like that one.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that one yet. The best one that I can remember is the one where you and your buddy, your coworker, were confronted by that one, and he threw the log at you when you flashed your light at him.
Oh no, that was just me. The one you're probably thinking about is when we got roared at, and my buddy ended up peeing himself.
Yeah. That's right.
And you could see him in the mirror, right? You could see the thing in the mirror.
Well, we seen what little bit of a light, ambient light, could reflect from the tail lights of the patrol unit.
Right.
And that was after a 16-year-old boy got the bike yanked right from underneath of him, and
put the bike up in a tree, didn't he?
Yeah, threw the bike up in a tree about 18 feet and then bent the frame.
That's a dick move even for a Sasquatch to do.
Yeah, it is. Fuck the kid's bike up and throw it up in the tree.
Now later on that night, you guys, when you showed up on that call, you guys saw what, 6 or 7 sets of eyes?
Well, that's the night we got roared at. I didn't take the original call. He was telling me about it, and then I went out with him, and we went looking in that area, and that's when we seen 6 or 7 different sets of eyes.
Okay.
And at various heights, and we'd slowed down to a snail's pace, and that's when we got roared at. And of course, the whole time, I'm driving like at 2 miles an hour, looking at this. Our takedowns are on, and our spotlights are out there, and we'd shine a spotlight out in a certain location and wouldn't see anything. But, as soon as we take the light away, we could still see the eye shine. Mm. And so, okay, well, the light's not reaching out far enough. No. And then we got roared at, and of course, I'm hauling ass out of there, and holy shit, that was a hairy night. No pun intended. So
right. They're definitely intense situations.
Yeah,
for sure. Definitely are. Well, we appreciate it,
No
T.
doubt.
You bet.
We do, and like I said, maybe next week at some point, Sean and I we'll bring you and William on at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll have you get into your into that encounter you had when you were a kid, and then Will said he'd talk about his two as well.
Yeah, and that's how it all started. When I was 13.
Yeah.
And then I'd spend a whole lot of time just reading and not really getting into the subject matter heavy like I had here the last 20 years. But
right.
But there's more to that than just having an encounter. It was a lifelong obsession. So
for sure, yeah, and that's what it is. I think we're all still, the more questions we answer, the more come up, and
yeah, we get an answer to one question and 5 more pop up. So
That's right. And that's why John and I tell everybody that's why we do this, is just to get the word out there and make people aware. That's
exactly
that's the important thing. Just make people aware these things are real.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the more we talk about this stuff, the last show and this show, when you just talked about hearing that thud and seeing one run away, it clicked in my memory. I've heard thuds where I hunt for years, and I never knew what it was. Now I still don't know for sure what it is. Right, it gives me an idea, and I never really thought about that before. But I hear it all the time when I'm out there. Not all the time, but I'd say I've heard it at least 20, 30 times. And it's it's always made me think, what the hell? Because it's not an animal like stomping its feet. It's more of an impact, like thunk, right on the ground.
Yeah.
It brings more stuff up, and it
does.
it kind of clears everything up for me. Yeah.
Well,
Good
and
to talk
that's
about.
just it. It's and that's the one thing that me and Bear talk about a lot is that a lot of guys are just looking at the ground level or looking at eye level. You need to be looking up.
Right. I agree.
Not just don't get tunnel vision. Scope your entire surroundings.
Scope it.
And that's the whole thing. And that's Bear King is there's controversy with Bear. But it's you got nobody better to ask if you got a real question.
Right.
He'd spent enough time in the woods, especially in the swamps of Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, even East Texas. He'd had enough time looking around. He knows his shit, and as much as Will does. And that's the one thing I did. There'd been a couple of times I'd ask him questions on this, that, and the other, and he said, "Well, hell, what do you think?" The horse are going to look at getting up in a tree. They can survey their landscape so much better.
Absolutely.
And why wouldn't they climb?
Why wouldn't they?
And that's and Bear's almost an encyclopedia of these things. And I wouldn't say he's an expert by any means,
right.
But he definitely knows his shit.
Right.
He knows where to look.
Yeah, for sure.
He knows more than the average bear, is what you're trying
exactly.
to say.
Exactly. Good. Well put, Sean. Well put. Well, thanks, T, man. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Like I said, next week, Sean and I'll get you and Will on at the same time. We'll have a nice discussion.
Okay, that'll work.
And
cool.
T, how can anyone in your area, man? How can they get a hold of you if they have any issues?
Just you can go to tyoung69@yahoo.com.
Okay, gotcha. And everyone out there, like I told you earlier, T's a great guy, knows his stuff. Been one of my mentors, big brother. Likes to bust my balls a lot, but I still love him.
This ain't ball busting. This is harassment. This would be categorized as harassment.
He fails to realize that one day I will take the throne.
No, my young Padawan. You got to go back to rule number one. Rule number one is the master has failed more times than you've tried, and rule number two, refer to rule number one.
Hey, you gotta give it to me. I give it a shot at least.
Yeah, you do. You keep trying.
I keep trying.
Keep trying.
All right, buddy. And Sean, how can they get a hold of you, man?
onthetrail.sw@gmail.com or nebraskajrg@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook. I'm in the GRG, and I'm also on the trail. So either of those places.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Same here. You can reach me on the trail, on the trail.jf@gmail.com or at jrg.executive.dif@gmail.com or hit me up on Messenger.
There you have it, people. T.W. Youngs. I first heard of T.W. A few years ago on an episode from Will Jevning's podcast called Bigfoot and the Police Officer. You ought to go check that one out. It goes into a little bit more detail from some of the stuff they talked about tonight. A lot of interesting components to that story, and it's actually one of the podcasts that I'll pull out, and if I've got a friend or a family member or something that wants to hear maybe a good witness encounter, I pull out TW's interview with Will from back in the day. if you don't believe what TW is saying, then you probably won't believe anything. Not only is TW, a veteran of the armed forces, he is also a craftsman. He makes a pretty sweet fixed blade knife. I know for a fact because I purchased one, and then somebody from the post office decided they needed it more, and it didn't make it from TW's house to my house. Somewhere in between there, somebody got a pretty sweet knife out of the deal. He's got a bunch of them. You guys should go check him out. Look him up on Facebook, T.W Youngs. He's got an email address, TWYoungs or tyoungs69@yahoo.com. On behalf of the team, I'd like to thank TW for his time. I'd also like to give a shout out to Steve Baxter for his graphic artwork he's doing for our show. It's fantastic stuff. Steve has a Flickr account. Jeremiah's going to post a link to that on the show notes, so you can go check out his stuff there. It's pretty neat stuff. He's also got an email address where where you can contact him directly. His email address is chumpanzie@hotmail.co.uk. That's chumpanzie@hotmail.co.uk. If anybody wants to get in touch with us directly, it's a couple ways you could do that. You could go over to Facebook and find us on our Facebook page. That's called On the Trail, Cryptid and Paranormal Research. That's On the Trail, Cryptid and Paranormal Research. We also set up some email addresses for people to get us in touch with us on a more personal level. The email addresses are pretty easy to remember. Get in touch with any one of us on the team. It's On the Trail, all one word, onthetrail.jf for Jeremiah, .sw for Shawn, .dg for Don, and .zk for me. You got an idea for a show, or if you want to get in touch with one of us directly and discuss something, that's where you can do it. And lastly, we'd like to express our gratitude to you all for spending your valuable time with us listening to this show. We hope you're all doing well out there and managing through these strange times. Be good to each other, and we hope to see you next time. Take care, everybody.